Tom Poulter found her outside.
Outside?
We don't know how she got there. I expect her parents are dead, though. It's an awful fire.
Poor child.
There's something wrong with her. I know she's not deaf or dumb or retarded or anything. Before she fell asleep, I tried to get her to talk. She didn't say a word. Not a word. Even in shock, the powers of speech aren't completely gone. It's as though she doesn't know how to talk.
Hello, and welcome to the Twilight Pwn, the internet's third most popular Twilight Zone podcast. My name is John. I'm joined by my co-host, Fred.
Hello.
How you doing this week, Fred?
Don't touch my tools. We're back.
That reminded me right off. I was in Oklahoma a couple weeks ago, and we visited the aquarium in Tulsa.
Yeah.
And there was an exhibit of turtles, and they put up a sign, because I guess some children just can't stay away, that said, "Don't touch the turtles." And I couldn't get "Don't touch the tools" out of my head, or just kept reading the sign in that voice.
I'm sure your family was delighted by that.
Everyone got it. Everyone laughed. I mean, they didn't know so much of the show, but they remembered that comedian.
Yeah, exactly. The catchphrase lives longer.
It was like doing a laugh-in bit, you know? It's just burned into the psyche.
Exactly, the public consciousness.
Yeah.
Shall we hit people with the big news about your change of venue, or shall we sort of tease that out over the next couple of weeks?
Oh, yeah, we've got a big, exciting thing that we're going to reveal that has no bearing on the podcast.
John,
well, it has
everything
has a
matters.
slight bearing. Yeah, all the pieces fit, Fred.
Yeah.
I will be moving from Austin to Pittsburgh in approximately 2 weeks, so we have been trying to put some episodes in the tank and do what we can, but we will most likely miss a little time during that rather large transition.
But more importantly, we're going to lose our proto-hipster status if only one of us is in, an Austin or a Brooklyn-type city.
Well, according to pittsblog.com, right. Pittsburgh is the new Austin, so sure. I believe we'll become even pro-tier hipsterish.
And if you can't trust pittsblog.com...
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're moving, so I'm taking up that.
Exactly, yeah. I'm kind of thinking I'm going to have to ramp up the hipsterism to sort of maintain our cred. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure the listeners can't wait, but in the meantime, let's talk about this episode.
This week we will be discussing the episode Mute, a fourth season episode, the 107th of the production run. It aired originally on January 31st, 1963.
What you're witnessing is the curtain raiser to a most extraordinary play. To wit, the signing of a pact, the commencement of a project. The play itself will be performed almost entirely off stage. The final scenes are to be enacted a decade hence and with a different cast. The main character of these final scenes is Ilsa, the daughter of Professor and Mrs. Nielsen, age 2. At the moment she lies sleeping in her crib, unaware of the singular drama in which she is to be involved. 10 years from this moment, Ilsa Nielsen is to know the desolating terror of living simultaneously in the world and in the Twilight Zone.
Do you like how Rod kind of starts that off by being like, the play will have nothing to do with these characters and will take place a decade later in a different city.
I'm just glad he's very clear about it, because I had that impression, and I was like, wait a minute, what? And,
this is purely a scene to stretch it out to an hour.
You appreciate a straight dealer like that.
Yeah, exactly. So we like to write our own Serling-style intros. Who's up?
We've kind of been debating about whether this bit has got a long life ahead of it. I don't think this week's entry isn't, in favor of that. But
okay. All right.
Good morning, class. Today we're going to be discussing some of the themes that were prevalent in post-war... Oh, wait, what? Twilight Zone. Oh, right. You need me to do one of those things. Sure. Could I see the script for a second? Okay, right. No, I can just look at a few pages and get the gist. Okay, sure. All right, ready. Let's go. Review a room filled with a half-dozen Deutschlanders deciding a deal. Study these faces well. For the next hour, you're going to learn a lot about them. Wait, what? Nothing to do with the rest of the show? But this is like 10 pages of script. Totally irrelevant? Oh, alright, hey, let me flip through some more. Okay, got it. Portrait of a small town. A simple man sits on a simple seat thinking simple thoughts when two well-dressed Deutschlanders needing direction descend upon him. He may seem a simple sort, but in fact... What? Well, if the scene is totally irrelevant, what's it doing there? You know what? I have things to do. I've got to get back to Antioch College, of course. Oh, okay, fine, I'll do the line. I've got to get back to my teaching gig in the Twilight Zone.
Is that from your one-man show, Rod Serling in the later years of the Twilight Zone?
I've got a grant I'm hoping to develop. So I'll be moving to Pittsburgh. There's an artist colony up there.
Yeah, exactly. Mine sucks, but it's a little shorter. So here we go. Okay, here we go. What you're witnessing is the curtain raiser to a most extraordinary play. The play itself will be about twice as long as you want it to be. You'll consider leaving during intermission, but instead you'll guzzle a plastic cup of wine from the concession stand and trudge back in to watch the rest of this most extraordinary play. The main characters of this most extraordinary play are a sweet mother who knows the quickest way to a little girl's heart is to burn her letters, a small-town sheriff who recently had his personality surgically removed, and a cabal of evil Germans who experiment on their children. Or in other words, Germans. When the final curtain comes down on this most extraordinary play, you may wish you had gone to a movie instead. But it's not your place to question this most extraordinary play. It's merely your job to support your local theater company and do a piece on them for your podcast. The podcast is about the Twilight Zone. I don't know.
No, I think yours had jokes. Yours was good.
Okay, well,
much better.
It had jokes. Low bar.
Still gets it above mine.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we should do like a listener survey and see if anyone has any strong feelings about that bit. By all means, write in. This is the 4th season episode. It's an hour long. It is available for streaming on the internet for free on Hulu. So check it out there, or buy the DVDs and Blu-rays, because we are going to be spoiling all 17 parts of this episode of the Twilight Zone. It's a long one. I mean, it's all 4th season episodes are long, and it's not that it's like the most boring, but it certainly has like 12 different it's like a Tarantino episode of the Twilight Zone or something.
It just has a lot that doesn't connect on initial viewings.
Yeah.
Once you watch it a few times, it all falls into place.
Exactly. All right. So we open up in Dusseldorf in 1953. That was the real summer of love. Germany in the 50s. Right. It was carefree time. I appreciated, as a bit of a Germanophile, that they included the umlaut in Dusseldorf.
They were able to sneak it by the censors.
Yeah, exactly. Good. Right. There's a meeting going on in this very German hotel, and we know it's German because they're being served by someone who's in Lederhosen. I just like that. Like, just to clarify, we are in Germany. We've got Lederhosen. It's like that thing where if you travel back in time, you know you're in the 20s if you see a flapper, you know?
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed how quickly the meeting gets really heavy. Did you like that as well? Like, they're all kind of chatting, and then, like, the chairman of the board or whatever is like, so, let's begin. We agree that children can speak telepathically. Like, and there is a secret language. Like, it just really gets going right off the bat. Like, they don't, no muss, no fuss.
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, for a scene that doesn't do anything, it really jumps right into the middle of not needing to be there.
It's a strange, they're very businesslike about it, you know. We have 3 minutes to fill, gentlemen. The basic plot is, or the basic idea of this group is that they're all professors, and they all agree on this theory that children or humans can communicate telepathically and were able to do so before the invention of spoken and written language. Mm-hmm. And in order to test this theory and create a race of Supermen, they're going to basically never speak to their children and don't show their children written words so that their children develop this telepathic language. It's a bit of a rubber stamp meeting. They didn't really need to call it.
There's tons of conference meetings they just left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, it's true. You know, everyone agrees to it, basically. There's like kind of two holdouts who are mildly concerned about, like, depriving their children of companionship, speech, and writing. But worries are quickly assuaged, and we end the meeting. So then we get Serling's intro. Very disappointed that he wasn't also in Lederhosen. That would have been sweet.
It was fun to listen to him just disavow this one straight up.
It kind of was.
Just wash his hands of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Everything that follows from the episode, you can fit in all the pieces. So this was literally just 5 or 10 minutes that you cut and nothing changes in the story.
Yeah, here's the thing. I agree that, like, on a functional dramatic level, it really doesn't need to be there. But it does give it a kind of scope that's sort of interesting. Most Twilight Zone episodes occur over, like, one day or even an hour.
Right.
And it's sort of interesting that this takes place, like, across the span of a decade.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, kind of. And I mean, I guess you kind of think like, oh, it's not just these weird, isolated, I don't know, some kind of quasi-hillbilly mutant family. It's some kind of weird German conspiracy, so...
Well, to say it's weird, I mean, it's a German conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's pretty par for the course. In the next conference room over,
yeah,
there are a lot
it was
worse
definitely
things
not the
going
worst
on.
thing they did in the last 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So we flash forward ahead 10 years, and one of the evil families, they're actually not German, they're American, and they've settled in a neighborhood, or a city rather, called German Corner. I don't know. It was weird that they felt the need to name it after the place where the people are from, but whatever. That's where they are.
It's kind of like in Coming to America when
when
the African prince goes to Queens.
Yeah. It's a little weird. They are living in this quaint Pennsylvania town known for its charming antiques and extremely flammable houses. Their house is burning right away, and the sheriff gets called to investigate it. They find out that the couple's daughter, who we know, of course, has been raised not to speak, has survived.
I did kind of like the sheriff when he's getting the call. He does kind of make some comment about, like, man, they should have never moved so far out of town.
Yeah.
You know, they're so private, blah, blah, blah. And it was a tiny touch, but I did like that, you know, the destruction was somehow consequently linked to their behavior.
Yeah.
It wasn't just utterly random. If they had lived in town, it might have been manageable, but it made sense from a character standpoint.
Yeah.
Why it could be so devastating.
Yeah, of nuance. The sheriff, played by the actor who played the dad in Walking Distance.
Right. Which took me a minute to recognize.
Yeah.
I knew it was a familiar face, but he was just being so flat and not supportive of young Marty. That
He definitely took the course on Do Not Act or whatever.
from the one guy from Odyssey on Flight 33.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so the sheriff takes the young girl home, and his wife, Cora, greets them. We learn quickly that they had a young girl who died. It's kind of interesting how there's all these different plot things happening at the very beginning. It's a very Matheson-y touch. He likes to set up all these different threads, and you're not quite why do we care that the sheriff who's saving this weird child loses a daughter? But of course it quickly becomes clear why, because they drop her off and put her to bed in this room, which is shrine-like.
She's beautiful. She looks just like Sal.
Yeah.
Doesn't she?
What you call a warning sign from your foster parent. You don't want to hear things like that.
Yeah. That's like the replacing our dead daughter theme playing in the background. It's a sensitive subject. I mean, certainly, I would not begrudge even a fictional character for maintaining the look and feel of their deceased daughter's room. But
you've got a girl who's gone through some shock herself.
Exactly.
You don't kind of rub in the neuroses and the problems.
Give it a couple of months. Let it sink in. So it's the next morning, and the sheriff is discussing the situation with his wife, Cora. He puts the puzzle pieces together pretty damn quick. He was talking about the daughter, and he's like, she doesn't know how to speak. It's like her parents just died in a fire, and she probably is traumatized herself. Is it really a shock that she's not talking right away?
We had that clip in the intro, which I did feel mildly uncomfortable since he drops an R-bomb, which is not an appropriate terminology.
Yeah.
But it's kind of weird. He's a small-town sheriff, not a small-town, child therapist. And he's just like, even with shock, they talk. It's no, that's kind of the point of shock, isn't it?
Yeah, it's also, it's weird.
And it's been a couple hours. Well, I guess from then it's been another day, or how long has it been?
No, he's so damn sensitive. He's like, she won't even talk to me. It's rude.
Right.
She must not know how to speak.
Yeah, it's a quick jump.
So we get a nice little scene of Ilsa lying in bed, sort of reaching out telepathically. It's at this point we learn that the experiment, did work, and she did develop these psychic powers, and she's reaching out, calling for her parents. And I really like to say I really like it as an exaggeration. It's interesting. It's it zooms in on her face, and then it actually freeze frames, and then we cut to a shot moving through the burned out building, which is actually handheld. It adds a kind of jarringness to it, and kind of an emotional unease that it's held by hand. I thought it was cool. I mean, it's so rare in the Twilight Zone to see a handheld camera, and you usually sense it's kind of just random, but I think it was a really nice touch. There's like a lot of interesting stuff like that in this episode.
There's another one of her using her telepathic abilities that I think was a bit more goofy, but this one I did agree was well done.
Yeah, it's one of these instances where you're kind of like, there sure is a lot of directing in this. Like, it's not all like purposeful, like shadow play maybe, but it's interesting, and it's cool that they played with it.
Yeah.
Oh, also her parents are dead. So there's another little sort of filmmaking sequence of Ilsa at the dinner table trying to understand what Harry and Cora, the sheriff, and his wife are saying.
Yeah, I've got a little clip of the way she hears, cause, I mean, they handled things visually and sonically in unique ways.
I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. Their decision to live so far out of town.
Why wouldn't they teach her how to talk? There's no reason why she can't talk. That's the part that I don't understand. He says he just can't understand it.
Where we learn that Ilsa is a Peanuts character.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I was thinking, or like she's like in Pink Floyd. Like, it gets very trippy there. It gets very echo-plexy.
Laying a little Mellotron in there.
Yeah, exactly. But I think what's cool about it is that, like, you notice how that really high string part comes in?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of annoying, and I think that, like, that's neat because, you know, you are kind of annoyed by that, the same way that Ilsa is annoyed by people talking. At some point in this, Ilsa sort of hears Cora thinking, and that sort of reassures her because she's like hearing sort of like a psychically communicated thought as opposed to yelling. And that is reassuring to her until Cora talks again, and it's annoying, and she runs up to her room all upset and stuff. And the wife, like trying really hard, runs up to Ilsa's room, and we get a scene where Ilsa reads Cora's mind and sees a memory, which is Cora losing her own daughter.
Now, this is the one that I think was not handled as well. Cora is walking out of the room. There's kind of a freeze frame on the back of her head, and then the scene is then broadcast or like displayed on the back of her head, kind of like a comic book or something, like thought bubble, or, you know, it feels like a 20s or 30s cartoon where they cut to the inside of the person's head and you see there's like little birds flying around in there. So it's like a very sad, real scene that lacks dignity because you can see her hair all around it.
Exactly. Framed by hair. You kind of think of psychic powers as being kind of cooler than that, like a little bit less like Looney Tunes.
It just conveys the impression that, like, if you crack open our skulls, little movies of all our thoughts are playing.
Exactly. It's like Ilsa has the power to read people's thoughts and turn them into Donald Duck cartoon.
Right.
The memory itself, obviously, it's very sad. This woman is learning of the death of her child, but it struck me as somewhat weird because, like, she's at the kitchen door and she opens it and two men run up to her and they're holding the child's body and they're like, "I'm sorry, she went swimming." Like, why are you just like... I know this is horrible. I should shut up. But just like...
Yeah, it kind of has the feel of like when your high school friends dump you on the front lawn or something and just run.
It's
much more horrible.
It has more this kind of like, "Oh, gee, ma'am, I'm sorry I knocked over your mailbox." Like, it's got that vibe.
Better analogy, yeah.
Quickly, we learn that some letters have arrived for the dead Krauts, Ilsa's parents, and the sheriff, Harry, is going to write the people who wrote to Ilsa's parents to try and find out if Ilsa has any living relatives who can come adopt her. Kind of a side note, but we talk a lot on this podcast about, like, people with, like, 50s slab faces, you know? I don't think Harry, the sheriff, exactly has a slab face, but he has, like, a 50s voice. You know what I mean? Like, his voice is just so of the era. If someone talked to me the way that he talks now, I would, like, it would be very disorienting.
He's not like the best example of a slab face, but I think he's got some beef to him too.
Yeah,
I mean,
combine the face with the voice, and you've got a real thing,
like a very real 50s man.
Yeah, exactly, a man's man. So the sheriff puts the letters in the mailbox, but when he goes off, Cora dashes out there, grabs them, and burns them, which is kind of...
Because she loves the kid.
Exactly.
It's okay, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think that you're supposed to be aware that that's a step too much, maybe?
Maybe? Yeah. I don't know where our sympathy's supposed to lie.
Well, but
I really don't.
In a way, I actually think that's one of the great things about the episode is that it's a little bit like you understand why she's doing it, but you also understand that it's like a little messed up.
We'll discuss more as the episode develops.
Right. So Ilsa sees this grabbing and burning of her only link to her living relatives, and she runs off into the Twilight Zone town square, which is becoming an increasingly familiar sight as we plow through these episodes.
She hops over
the body
robot
of the electric
granny.
grandma. Yeah, I have that exact note written down.
Nice.
William Shatner runs by, mumbling about the devil.
Like all these folks in town kind of run and surround her because I think they're worried about the little girl who nearly got hit by a car.
Yeah.
And then the loving Cora just kind of grabs onto her and has a hysterical fit, screaming at everyone to leave her alone.
Yeah.
Which is just a bunch of people who are expressing concern for her. So, again, the mom is painted as a questionable choice as caregiver.
Yeah. Just another piece of that puzzle. Cora and Harry are sitting down to a nice, well-adjusted evening. And a mysterious lady arrives. Another thread, Matheson kind of keeps throwing new stuff at you. And it's a woman named Mrs. Frank, who's a school teacher. She's got an interesting vibe. I mean, later on, there's more to her vibe. But, right off the bat, I was like, are they going for, sexy teacher? Or are they going for, badass teacher who doesn't play by your rules? Or,
Yeah, I feel like there's, a hard-ass or even evil Mary Poppins vibe to her. She's even got the
perfect.
Mary Poppins look.
She looks like Mary Poppins' badass twin sister or something like that. You don't quite know if she's going to pull a delightful bag of sugar or a knife out of her pocket.
Miss Frank, she's a tough love teach. Let's listen in.
It was positively criminal of her parents not to have started her education years ago. The smugness of them, the insufferable disdain. We do not wish our daughter to go to your school, just like that. In many ways, the fire was a blessing of her life.
What?
I'm not referring just to her lack of education, Mrs. Wheeler.
But to call such a hideous thing a blessing.
I'm sure I didn't mean it that way, Mrs. Wheeler.
It's kind of weird when you've got, two unlikable characters saying unlikable things at each other. I also really like from that clip when Cora says, "What?" It's got kind of like a Kanye kind of quality to it. Yeah, it's got that. We should grab it. Grab it for next week. So Ilsa's going to school. The first day of school, she's already pretty bored. She's having kind of like a little daydream in class of remembering how her father taught her various things. Which is kind of an interesting sequence. It starts with a little boy in class talking about a boat and reading something out loud. And Ilsa is, I don't know, I guess somehow able to understand it. Maybe at this point she can understand people, or maybe it's just she reads his thoughts. But she makes the point that, a boat isn't words, it's a boat. And she has this vision of her father sitting her down with a picture of a boat and, thinking at her. And we got kind of a cool sequence of him, a close-up of the picture of the boat, and then the picture turns into, a real film. I mean, it's a freeze frame, so it's not you can sort of see the seams in the effect, but I thought it was pretty cool.
No, it's a good idea. I mean, the effect doesn't blow you away, but it's a good way of conveying what they were trying to do.
Yeah, and it's evocative. It really reminds me of that moment in Perchance to Dream, another Matheson-penned episode, where the guy has the long diatribe about how he can sit there and look at a picture of a boat and get it to move if he uses his mind. It's kind of weird just to see little things like that pop up in two totally different episodes.
Was Perchance to Dream Matheson or Beaumont?
Good question. I'm going to go on a limb and say it was Matheson and look like an idiot if I'm wrong.
Oh, man, I'm so excited for the boner clip. I think we're going to get it. Written by Charles
Beaumont.
Beaumont.
Hit it.
I hate to tell you, but I'm afraid this time you pulled a boner.
I have a feeling it will be you pulling the boner later in this episode. But I'll take that for now.
You kind of leapt over her first moments in the new classroom where we got a little glimpse of early speech therapy techniques.
Now, Ilsa. Can you say your name, Ilsa? Try to say it. Your name, child. Ilsa. 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 Try to say it, child. Your name. You'll learn.
I guess this doesn't convey as well. This has her standing in front of a class of complete strangers and kind of goading her and poking her with a stick. Like, do it!
Shame-based therapy. She actually is literally poking her with a ruler. She kind of like holds a ruler over her head. Later on, she has that same room full of strangers yell her name at her, which, just to kick it up a notch. Ilsa's insubordination of not being able to speak leads to a little detention sesh with the teacher, Mrs. Frank. And this is kind of when the shark meets the jump on this episode. It turns out that the teacher is also a psychic too, but not one who has been raised by evil Germans. Someone who was raised by, stop me if I'm wrong here, by her father in order to try and communicate with the dead.
No, that's right.
That's just,
that's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you didn't grow up in the middle of the country, Fred. Yeah. You're one of those coastal people who look down on all of our simple devil-talking ways. Yeah.
A lot of people go down that route. It's a big program at Oklahoma State. The thing is like, that's kind of a cool idea on some level, like two people who have the same power. Because the woman reveals that she was raised in isolation like Ilsa, and they have it for a different reason. But that's like an episode in itself. Like, you can't just throw that in as like, by the way.
And don't worry, we're not going to address this again. Just enjoy this nugget.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. God, it's such a throwaway moment. It's just like, does everybody have this power? Like, turns out the sheriff was like raised by a raccoon, so he has it too. The hell? Next up, we see some new Krauts arriving in town. It's the couple from the initial meeting way back 10 years ago in the episode. 10 years since we started watching it. They were the couple that were a little bit hesitant about this whole let's, destroy our children.
Traumatize our children.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we get some sort of time-wasting classic fourth season.
Probably a very important scene. Let's just listen to it in its entirety.
Yeah, okay.
Please, where could we find authority?
Authority?
Yes, how do you say it? The constable? The...
Sheriff.
Oh, yes, the sheriff.
Turn around.
Peter?
Turn around. That building.
Oh. Danke. Thank you.
Constable.
Don't touch my tools. Yeah.
This is two minor characters asking for directions. And they gave some color to the guy who doesn't want to just give away the directions.
They practically put a goddamn eye patch on him. Like, he's like a weird old prospector character. He's like basically on a mule with like a bindle on his shoulder, scoffing about the constable.
Constable, huh?
Yeah.
Directions, sure, I bet.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Don't that beat off?
Yeah. The Krauts head on over to pick up Ilsa. They visit with Harry and Cora, and Cora adds lying to her list of wonderful character traits when she pretends to not have burned the letters, which is obviously, a point of contention. But the mind-reading Germans can see right through it. We get another scene in the school. It's very weird. The teacher's got like a weird like cult deprogramming thing going where she's having like all the kids like think really hard at Ilsa to get her to say her name. And it seems terrifying, but I guess we as the audience are supposed to think that's a good thing. I just love like these other kids in the classroom just like going home and like, today our teacher had us think at a girl. Did you notice how in the background on the chalkboard the word silence had been very conspicuously erased on the chalkboard?
No, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, just a nice little production touch.
Yeah.
Kudos to Henry Grace. And anyway, Ilsa arrives home and we get a kind of intense scene of the two visiting Germans trying to psychically chat with her, but now their psychic chat sounds like that sort of Peanuts psychedelia to her. Mm-hmm. She can't, she's lost this power by, living with norms, so to speak.
Right.
But at the end of it, Ilsa is so emotionally overcome that she breaks down and says out loud for the first time in the episode, "My name is Ilsa."
My name is Ilsa. My name is Ilsa. My name is Ilsa. My name is Ilsa. My name is Ilsa.
Don't cry, baby. Don't cry. I'm here.
Ilsa.
Don't cry, darling. I'm with you.
My name is Ilsa.
You can't take her away from me.
Cora!
No! I won't let them. I love her. And she loves me. She needs me. You have no right. You have no right. You have no right.
There's lots of peeking in that clip.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it helps the emotional intensity of it. What's really weird about that is that, it actually is really cool when she says, "My name is Ilsa." She hasn't talked the whole episode. It's a really nice moment. It's the only thing she can say. And the child actor does a very good job delivering those lines, and it is kind of emotional. And then, Hurricane Mom blows in.
Of course, you call that dramatic acting? Yeah. Take a seat. I've been doing this a little longer than you, sweetheart.
Yeah, exactly. At the end, they're rubbing each other's crying faces into each other, and the mother's cry goes from emotional to j'accuse. It really takes on a you can't take her away from me. Yeah. She'll be my best friend forever. It's got this very horrible intensity.
It's very hard to know
yeah.
how we're supposed to feel about this at all.
We get a little shot of the two Deutschlanders on their way out of town. They sort of lie and they say, "Oh, we didn't have power to adopt her anyway." Later, we when they're talking amongst themselves, we realize that they did, but they just didn't want to because at this point, she's lost her psychic powers, or they're not as good anymore. And anyway, she had a mother's insane love. So,
well, yeah, and then they kind of try and make it all better because they're her parents didn't really love her that much.
Yeah,
even
though we didn't know because we weren't there.
Right. Yeah, we haven't seen them for 10 years, but they didn't seem to really love her.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, how would they even know? Because Ilsa's only 10. Maybe in their letters they're "P.S. we don't love Ilsa" or something. I don't know. We end on, or it's close to the end, we get a classic Twilight Zone line for the ages. It's what does the wife say? She's "After all, love is more important than telepathy." Do you remember that? Yeah. That's going on the AFI list of movie quotes. And then Rod takes us out.
It has been noted in a book of proven wisdom that perfect love casteth out fear. While it's unlikely that this observation was meant to include that specific fear which follows the loss of extrasensory perception, the principle remains as always beautifully intact. Case in point, that of Ilsa Nielsen, former resident of the Twilight Zone.
Ilsa Nielsen, currently in therapy.
Right.
What is he talking about there? There's a book of proven wisdom. Is he talking about the Bible? Is that a quote from the Bible? Or
yeah, it's the Bible.
Cool. Check. It is interesting. The mother's love is creepy and probably traumatic to Ilsa. I think we're supposed to feel that it's a happy ending for her, but the episode goes out. It does show us that Ilsa's new mom is behaving a little bit underhandedly. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just that we can forgive her because she's a
little
mother.
Bit underhanded.
Okay, yeah, she's committing mail fraud.
That's a felony, Fred. That's a felony.
True. true. But do you know what I mean? Like, the episode does show us that Cora is not like a perfect character by any means, and I think that makes it all the stronger. Dare I say?
If it didn't have those last two scenes, one where you got the two German characters who are like, it's fine. Her real parents were worthless, and then you didn't have them like. And then you have like mom and daughter or new daughter kind of walking hand in hand, smiling. It's like you just made an extraordinarily complicated mess seem like it's really easy when it's not.
Yeah. I don't know. And then there's like the whole like open end of like Mrs. Frank indoctrinating her or whatever the hell. I don't know.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like things are going to be nice and smooth for little Ilsa in my mind.
But I think in a weird way, like, you know, in other episodes you might say that and it would be like a knock on the episode. But in this case, I actually think it kind of gives it a little bit of a depth that, like, they're characters who are not, like, just purely acting good all the time. There's some nebulousness to it, almost. Or do you think it's just supposed to be, like, a mother's love, and at the time, you know, an audience would just basically forgive a mother anything if she's doing it for the sake of a child in need?
I wouldn't be shocked if Matheson had written this with the intention of making a more interesting statement and been told to revise the ending so it's clear to everyone that this is okay.
Yeah,
and, like, they didn't bother to, like, really fix the stuff in the middle that makes it like this is not okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's true.
It has that feel of just a very tacked on, like, it's all right. Don't worry about all the big issues we've raised. And like has the mom worked through all her dead daughter issues? No, she just kind of got a weird surrogate that she's hysterically grabbing at the end. So,
God, that last moment is terrifying for anyone with mommy issues. Yeah. Major trigger warning on that. It raises a lot of, like, sort of interesting philosophical ideas too. I mean, for one, there's the whole issue of children being raised to not speak, which is maybe something we'll get into a little bit later. But, like, you know, when Ilsa's like thinking like words aren't things, like things are things. Like, isn't that like a weird summation of something from Plato on some level? Like the idea of a word being just a mere representation of a thing, and if you could develop a language that was purely things themselves, that would be like real communication. I feel like that's like a well-traveled ground in philosophy.
I feel like I understand it best from the book The Tommyknockers, so I don't know. We might be on different levels here. I just remember they all get telepathy and they start, at first they're talking in words in telepathy, and then they realize they can just shoot images at each other and it works a lot faster.
Yeah.
So, same diff.
There is a book of perfect knowledge. Proven knowledge. It is called Tommyknockers. Yeah. I think it's interesting, though. I mean, the episode doesn't really dwell on it, but it kind of, like, makes a glancing point on it. And it's one of these episodes where, like Shadow Play, you kind of get the feeling that the whole metaphor of Plato's caves is sort of in there a little bit, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's put to service, like, functionally just a science fiction plot or, like, a fantasy plot, but, like, it gives it a little bit more of a resonance, I think, to have that little touch in there. We actually had someone tweet at us. I sort of put out a roll call asking for people to do our work for us and send in any jokes or ideas for this episode. And someone who is taken on the Twitter handle Robbie the Robot, which is obviously not the real Robbie because they don't allow computers in Hazelden. Or is he in Betty Ford now?
I don't think Robbie's that great with technology.
True. But
he's kind of the old guard, you know?
Exactly, right. He's like, what is this shit? But anyway, somebody with that Twitter handle tweeted us a link to a really interesting Wikipedia page about this idea of raising children not to speak, to kind of see what happens. And there's a guy who's called it the Forbidden Experiment, so I think that's what the Wikipedia page is called. And but it's actually,
there are a lot of forbidden experiments, I guess, with children. This is a bad one. But
yeah, it's true. But this has been done like many times in history, and there's like a list of like, I mean, the first one I think was like in the time of the pharaohs, and then it was like the Greeks tried it out too. But there's a lot of like interesting examples of like what people tried to do and what results they like thought they got from it. And I mean, it's obviously horrifying, but it's, you know, an interesting subject, so we'll probably put a link up on Tumblr. Also, there's a whole plot about this in the Paul Auster novels, the New York trilogy. There's like a child who's been raised in a locked room to try and develop the language of God is the idea in that. Have you ever read those? They're pretty fun. They're cool.
No, this is just basically falling back on my Nell knowledge, but it's just like, how would you get a child to not verbalize at all? Like, don't you just, I mean,
well, that's
we start
the
crying
point,
from the moment we're born, so wouldn't they still want to verbalize?
No,
you just like ignore it and they eventually stop?
I don't know that it's not to raise a child who's mute, it's to just see what kind of noises they make, and the presumption is that they'll like speak like in Aramaic without being told.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess I meant it specifically in the context of this episode. Like, how do you train the child just to not? They seem like if we just stay really quiet, they'll start using their mind. But wouldn't they just develop their own kind of system of sound?
Yeah, I mean, presumably. I mean, in Nell, there's more to it than that because we don't have to go into Nell talk.
We'll get on that in the Nell cast.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that Nell's different than that, John. You would know that if you were a serious Nell head. Anyway, I had the poster over my bed growing up.
That's how you pulled all that tail.
Yeah, exactly. You remember my room in college. I'd invite chicks back to watch Pop.
Show to your sensitive side.
Yeah, I got the widescreen edition of Nell. Oh, God. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't think they really did the homework on that for this episode. I think that you know, but historically speaking, the idea was that they would just magically start speaking Hebrew without any instruction, and obviously. Yeah. It did not work. Surprise, surprise.
People learned eventually that it's actually snake bites that make that happen.
Exactly.
So
right. Science.
Ignorance, didn't know any better.
Yeah.
What we doing next?
Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Yeah. Scott, Zachary, Mark Grams Jr., Zachary and Grams, and IMDb.
So I actually don't have any trivia for this episode. Zachary just kind of writes a little review of the episode, so he doesn't have trivia. IMDb didn't have trivia. I don't have trivia.
Yeah, well, I got a little bit from my Martin Grams Jr. book, The Twilight Zone, Unlocking the Door to a Television Classic. It's pretty straightforward stuff. The house that the Wheelers live in is known as the Philadelphia Story House, which was used for the movie The Philadelphia Story. And they used it also in The Parallel and also in Stopover in a Quiet Town, so it's a familiar site to Twilight Zone fans. The town center where Ilsa runs to, which we sort of joked that was also in I Sing the Body Electric, is also in No Time Like the Past, A Stop at Willoughby, and Walking Distance. Oh, not in Nick of Time. Interesting. But it's in 5 Twilight Zone episodes, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
In the original short story, the telepathic child was a small boy, not a small girl.
Right.
When Matheson was asked to write the script, he was asked to change the sex. I don't exactly know why. It doesn't seem like that would make much difference, but hey. Cool. What about bios?
And Jillian played Ilsa Nilsson. She speaks fluent Lithuanian. Little tidbit about her. Claudia Breyer played Frau Nielsen, who I think was just one of the many people in the early scene. She was also in an 80s Twilight Zone episode.
No, she's Ilsa's mom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean, she would have been one of the people in that room.
Yeah.
Robert Boone played Holgar Nielsen. He was the taxi driver in Death's Head Revisited.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Interesting.
German specialist.
Oscar Beregi Jr. played
right,
the main German who we see at the beginning, and then at the end he played Professor Carl Werner. We've also seen him in Death's Head Revisited as well, and in the Rip Van Winkle caper. So,
which in German would be Karl Werner.
Frank Overton played Harry Wheeler. He was Marty Sloane's dad in Walking Distance, like we said. Barbara Baxley played Cora Wheeler. She was also in an 80s Twilight Zone episode. Irene Daly played Miss Frank. She was also in the Amityville Horror. Her older brother was a popular song and dance man of the 40s and 50s. Just a little
not too many song and dance men anymore.
No. Percy Helton played Tom Poulter. He was also in Mr. Garrity and the Graves. He played the Drunken Santa in Miracle on 34th Street. I'm pretty sure that was the guy who they had the totally irrelevant conversation with. I think that's who that was.
Yeah, cool.
Maybe.
Good.
William Challey played a man. He was also in The Grave. Bill Irwin played a man in a flashback. He was also in Denton on Doomsday, Will the Real Martian Stand Up, and Walking Distance. Norbert Schiller played a man. He was in Hitler.
Nice. Good.
So it's been a while. We need a Hitler Well, we pretty much used everyone up at this point.
No, there's a big one coming up. Did you see the email?
I did, and I've probably already forgotten it.
Okay.
But
We got another big Hitler Connect coming up, so keep going.
listeners, stay tuned.
Yeah.
Written by Richard Matheson, directed by Stuart Rosenberg, who also directed He's Alive and I Shot an Arrow. He also directed the Amityville Horror, so I thought that was interesting. I wonder if he remembered Irene Daly from this experience or what. But no MST3K connection this week. Sorry, folks.
And we got an email from a listener, Thomas Dye, who points out that a couple weeks ago when we did Once Upon a Time, we missed an MST3 connection, and a very good one. Stanley Adams, who was in that episode, he played the portly professor, and he was in High School Big Shot playing the expert safecracker near the end. And Thomas rightly suggests that we pulled a bit of a boner, or more specifically you did. Play the clip.
I hate to tell you, but I'm afraid this time you pulled a boner.
Take your medicine.
I feel appropriately shamed.
Okay.
I think, we kind of also pulled a boner in discussing Once Upon a Time, in as much as saying, I thought it was funny that the guy was like, I'm a scholar of the 1890s, and I would like to go there. And I was like, who would ever want to go to that period? I've started reading a biography of Teddy Roosevelt and reading some other things. It was the Gilded Age of America. Yeah. It makes sense that some people maybe would think that was a good time, since it was the era of the, richest people that have ever been.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Moving forward, IMDb gives this episode a 6.8.
Pretty low. Not the lowest of the low, but it's in the...
It's pretty low for the episode.
Yeah. How do you feel?
It's good for fourth season. It's not good in general, kind of, maybe?
What's not good about it? Because I actually like this episode a lot. The psychic teacher is really, for me, the one thing that doesn't fit. I think that it's like a good fourth season episode because it has multiple strands of plot. Like most fourth season episodes are just like a very clear 30-minute idea that they're just like, let's double it, I think this one nicely weaves a lot of different...
They're loose. And they're not woven. They're like, here's a strand. Here's another one.
I guess on some level it's like three totally different ideas. I really like the premise. I think it's really interesting. I don't know.
It's a good premise.
It's a great premise, and I think that you combine this really weird, eerie, creepy German idea, and then you take it and you attach it to a weird small town in Pennsylvania that's very wholesome, and then you throw in the weird psychodrama of the mother and her dead daughter, and I think it's just a very compelling blend of different ideas. I don't think it's a classic, but I think it's very strong.
I think the whole is less than the sum of the parts. I feel like there's little bits and they don't connect. I think
that's fair.
The cold open is completely unnecessary. The scene with the guy giving them directions is glaringly irrelevant for even a fourth season episode.
Yeah.
There's just all these little moments that don't ring right.
Yeah.
And
that one scene with the guy is so ridiculous. Yeah.
If the ending had been tweaked marginally and left it more of an open question, I probably would feel pretty different. But by putting a happy ending on this relationship between the mom and the daughter, it just feels really creepy in a way that I don't think they meant it to. It seemed like the episode was going towards, this is kind of a weird, maybe not healthy place that they're going to be in, and that would have been fine. But then when you the episode's trying to tell me it's okay, it's it's not okay.
Yeah, it's like
something's wrong.
Monsters Ball ended with and they all lived happily ever after. Yeah, I hear you. I just think it's compelling and interesting. It's not perfectly made in any way, shape, or form, but
it's interesting. It's not bad, but the male lead doesn't give a particularly good performance. The female lead goes over the top. The child actress does pretty darn well for I guess not really having to say much, but she does well.
Yeah, she does
in her
do
role.
well. Yeah,
it's not exactly bad, and it's not forgettable. So I'd say how about a 6? I feel like I'm being generous at a 6.
I'm hard pressed to explain it and defend it in a way that goes much beyond I just kind of like it. I just kind of like it. It's really not boring to me. I don't. It could have been shorter.
Yeah, I'll
obviously.
say that.
Yeah, you know,
for a 4th season episode, it didn't drag and feel really dull as most of them do. Like the story kept me going, but it was kind of because it kept throwing new crap at me every 15 minutes.
That is fair.
And then kind of forgetting about it.
It was a bit of a gimmick. The Mrs. Frank loop was not really closed exactly. But I don't know. Exactly. It's weird. Like I know this is kind of crazy, but I'm thinking 8-. It's up there, not like top 10 or even top 20, but like it's in my top third of episodes of the Twilight Zone. So I'm going to say 8-. All right.
And your funeral.
Right. We all have our
You're
soft
going to hear
spots.
about it on the Twitter sphere.
Yeah.
You know?
You like sentimental episodes. I like episodes where children are denied their ability to speak.
I should have known when the episode opens with like a cabal of Germans plotting against children. You were going to love it.
It's, reminds me of my childhood. So that wraps it up for Mute. Thank you to, I think it was Bat Mary who suggested it.
And Writer's Responsibility on Tumblr.
Thanks to the both of you Tumblr fan. So as part of the moving process to the new Austin, the Austin of the Rust Belt or whatever, we're a little discombobulated, so we're not quite sure what we're doing next week, but stay tuned to our Twitter and Tumblr to find out what we're going to be tackling, and definitely request an episode as well, and there are lots of ways to do that. John, what are they?
So you could send us an email at twilightpwn, pwn@gmail.com. You can get in touch with us on Twitter at twilightpwn. You can check out our website, twilightpwn.tumblr.com. You could listen to us on Stitcher or TuneIn Radio, or you could subscribe to us on iTunes. If you're in there, if you'd leave us a review, we would really appreciate it. Want to say a special thank you to Adam TS and Opsimath for Logic for writing us a couple of reviews in the last few weeks.
Yeah,
we really appreciate it.
Finally cracked 100. Feel good about that.
Yeah, felt
Solid.
good. Felt real good.
Nice round number.
Yeah.
So I know that you're raising little Johnette to have psychic powers. No, I know that you're being a good father with her, but I'm curious, are you going to try and encourage her to learn Esperanto? Because I know you're a bit of an enthusiast.
I would be lying if I didn't think that there would be value in the whole family being able to speak Esperanto. I normally envision some sort of,
like you get hostage
Die Hard
situation.
or Broken Arrow hostage situation where we're able to pass communications.
Salve, Gamacho. Yeah. All right. Well, you get cracking on that. I'll stick to my German. I think that'll really come in handy in crisis situations.
Yeah, the terrorists will never know that language. Monster.
Bitteschön. I'll feed us in.
Later, friends.